I'd now like to call this April 21st, 2011 Cookeville City Council meeting to order. Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilman Anderson.
Present.
Councilman Woodford.
Present.
Mayor Swallows.
Here.
Vice Mayor Epps.
Here.
Councilman Albright. Present. All present.
Would everyone please stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, item 1, consider approval of agenda as presented. Have a
No changes.
No changes. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
All right. Item 2, consider approval of minutes of council meeting held on April 7th, 2011.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. All vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Okay, on to new business. Item 3, hold a public hearing and consider on first reading ordinance 110304, rezoning tax map number 83, parcel 108.03, located on West Cemetery Road, west of 1801 South Jefferson Avenue, from RS20, single-family residential, to CG, general commercial. Sponsors Mr. James Mills.
Mayor and council members, the properties identified on the map on the screen. Here's an aerial view of the site. This rezoning request was initiated by the Public Works Department on behalf of the property owner Sam Brown of Hicks Brothers Tractor. Here's a survey of the property. In the current zoning, it's contiguous with RS20 zoning to the north, south, and west, and with CG zoning to the east. It's also contiguous with the new Prescott South K-8 school to the west. It contains approximately 1.178 acres and is undeveloped. It was acquired by Hicks Brothers Tractor from the Putnam County Board of Education in exchange of land necessary for the extension of West Cemetery Road to South Jefferson Avenue. At the time of the exchange, Hicks Brothers Tractor requested that the acquired property be zoned commercially as a condition for the exchange. Our land use plan shows this being best suited for public, semi-public, and institutional development. The Planning Commission is recommending for approval of the rezoning, and the Planning Department concurs with the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion, questions from the council?
Have you gotten any comments from residents or?
No, we've not received any calls, and we had no comments when it went before the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Anyone else? Anything from the audience? Any questions? All right. Seeing none, all vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mills. Item number 4, consider appeal submitted by Cookeville Liquor and Wine Company to be located at 1066 South Willow Avenue, Cookeville, for a certificate of compliance for a retail liquor store license. Sponsors Ms. Kathy McLean.
Mayor and council, Cookeville Liquor and Wine Company to be located at 1066 South Willow Avenue was denied by the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board on 4/4/11 for a certificate of compliance due to a delay in the background check of Benchawana Kiradrom. One of the owners was out of the country. Since this time, the police department has completed the background check with no indication of any record that would preclude the owners from being considered for a retail liquor package store license. The owners also meet the residency requirements and all other requirements set forth in our ordinance. I recommend that they be granted a certificate of compliance for a retail liquor package store.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any questions, comments from the council?
I would just say that when they came before the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board, they just didn't have this one background check, but they had run the notice in the newspaper, and no member of the public came and objected to the store, and they have remedied that one defect. So everything else is in order, and I think you've been supplied with a checklist where everything has been checked. So I definitely think it's in order from a legal standpoint.
Okay, thank you.
There's two things on here that's not.
Well, I'd point out that the items that aren't checked yet on the checklist cannot be checked until they're ready to open the store.
Yeah. Everything that's required in
Yeah.
advance has been approved.
Okay.
Okay, do I understand this, that these things will be approved then?
Well,
Later?
they can't open their business if it's not. I mean, they can't do the fire or the business license until they actually get the stock in the store and the fixtures and things in the store. So all of the liquor store applications have these two things blank as they go through this, because that's the last thing they do, and they can't open as a retail establishment until they have their business license and they pass the fire inspection. But they can't do the fire inspection until they get their fixtures and everything in the building. So everything they need for their certificate of compliance has been approved and is in order, but they can't actually open until they get these last two things.
So everything they can do has been done.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Well,
Codes Department
codes
does the fire
does.
inspection.
And they have to have their inventory and, be ready to open when we do the inspection.
I guess the only question is if for some reason, I don't think this would happen, but if for some reason they don't meet the fire inspection codes or pass codes, then they will not be able to open. Is that correct? Okay.
That's
so
correct. They would have to remedy that problem.
Okay. So regardless of what we do, if something is not finished, it will not open unless it's all done.
That's just like any other business.
Okay. Very good. All right.
All right. Any discussion from the audience? All right. Seeing none, let's vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. All right, on to item 5, consider appeal submitted by Jefferson Wine and Liquor to be located at 620 South Jefferson Avenue, Suite 108, for a certificate of compliance for retail liquor store license. Sponsors, Ms. Kathy McLean.
Mayor and Council, Jefferson Wine and Liquor, to be located at 620 South Jefferson Avenue, Suite 108, was denied by the Alcoholic Beverage Control Board on 4/4/11 for a certificate of compliance due to a delay in the completion of the building to be inspected. Since this time, the Codes Department has completed all full inspections of the building, square footage, and granted a certificate of occupancy. The owners meet all requirements set forth in ordinance, and I recommend they be granted a certificate of compliance for a liquor package store.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
And I would say again, these people came to the same meeting, and they did not, they could not be measured for the square footage because the interior of their building was still under construction, and therefore they could not either meet the square footage requirement or obtain a certificate of occupancy but nobody came from the public. They did notify, they did publicize everything, and there was no public objection to the issuance. But until they got these two checked off, they could not be granted the certificate of compliance, and that's all been remedied now. Their construction is satisfactorily complete, and they have more than 1,000 square feet of store space for the public, and their certificate of occupancy has been issued. And just like the last one, their business license and fire inspection will have to be complete before they can actually open. So they have met all the requirements of the ordinance for a certificate of compliance now.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rader. Anyone else?
No.
Anything from the audience? All right. Seeing none, all vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Item 6, consider appointment of representative to the Putnam County Tax Equalization Board. Sponsors, Mr. Jim Shipley.
Mayor and Council, Judy Maynard has agreed to serve on the Tax Equalization Board. She is a resident of the city of Cookeville. She's in the real estate business, tax appraisal, property appraisal business. So I think she'd be a good fit for that board, and I would recommend your approval.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion from the council?
Has she served before in this capacity?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
Not as long as I've been around. That's a long time, so,
Okay.
Well, and she's willing to serve, right?
yeah.
We always appreciate that.
Right.
Anything else? All right, seeing none, all vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you. Item 7, consider declaring vehicles, equipment, and miscellaneous items as surplus. Sponsors Mike Davidson.
Mayor and council members, recently all the city departments went through their inventory of equipment, office equipment, vehicles, and I believe you have a list of all these items in your packets, but these items are no longer being utilized by the departments, and we would request that they be declared surplus so they could be sold at public auction. Typically, in the past, we have used a website, GovDeals, to sell these items, but I'd recommend that they be declared as surplus. And I'll be happy to answer any questions if I can about some of these items, if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion from the council?
Just
So,
coup-
Mr. Davidson, you don't think this vehicle with a no steering column, we can't use that anymore?
I'm not sure. I think Leisure Services, looked at it, but I'm not sure they...
Mr. Woods
Rick
put in his bid on Gov.
So you're saying he doesn't know what direction he's going in?
Mike, when we have surplus properties, surplus property, I understand it's pretty standard just to swap it within departments, and if people need things, just to go ahead and pick and choose kind of thing. Is that correct?
Yeah, each department, we've discussed these at staff on Wednesday, and each department has kind of looked over these. If there's anything that they might want to try to pick up from the other departments, I'm not sure. I think there's been a few items that we've expressed interest in, different departments, but everyone has looked at them, talked about them, yes.
Good deal.
Typically, I mean, this is a pretty long list of stuff here. I mean, I know there's no way to tell, but do you have any idea? I mean, what kind of money does this stuff, a big list of this stuff, bring? I mean, 'cause some of it's useless, but
Some of it is useless, and we'll get a $5 bid on a lot of just stuff. I mean,
Group of stuff.
The vehicles, we've seen those go anywhere in the past from $400 to $800 for the old police vehicles. You just never know.
yeah.
Never know.
I can testify I went to see the old police vehicles, and they're ready to go.
Well, it's been my experience on the council that the employees and the departments run these vehicles until there's no running them anymore, and then they give them to Rick.
So once we do get this money, would the money go back to each department at that point?
The items that belong to the general fund, that revenue will come back to the general fund. The utilities, that any of their items, that funding goes back to the utilities.
Okay. Sorry, all the questions. I was just curious.
Oh, that's
But
fine.
no, like the police department doesn't get to keep that money, it just goes in the general fund.
General fund, okay.
Well, I mean, the utilities pay their own way. Okay.
Oh.
No,
You're special.
yeah.
All right, any comments from the audience? Seeing none, all vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Davidson. Item 8, consider authorizing the Electric Department Director to execute an agreement with Twin Lakes Communications, providing for the attachment of cables and equipment to its poles for the distribution of fiber cable services. Sponsors, Mr. Tony Peake.
Mayor and Council, this is just somewhat of a standard agreement that we've used in the past with cable companies, namely Charter Communication, Kentucky Data Link, Iris Networks, and Twin Lakes has formed a new company. As you know, they have the company Twin Lakes Telephone Cooperative now. This is Twin Lakes Communication. They're looking to install fiber cable in the city of Cookeville in the Cookeville Electric Department footprint and offer or compete and offer cable services. The rental rate for these folks will be $12.52 per pole per year. That's standard rate that we charge the other folks. And looked at that a few years ago, and that is the state average of all the electric power companies in the state of Tennessee that provide these kind of attachment agreements. We also require that they provide us with application of what they're going to do before they do it. Because as you can imagine, if you look at some of the pole lines down some of the streets, they're getting pretty crowded. You know, telephone company Frontier, they basically, on our poles, they contract for 20 to 23 feet, and the first communication cable goes at a foot above that, so it's beginning. So we're going to have to get out and change out some poles and do a lot of make-ready work, and each of these folks, we require them to pay full charge for all of the work that we have to do relative to that. And I think that's about it. Unless you got any questions, I would ask for your approval to allow me to sign that agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Peak. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any questions from the council?
Ms. Peak, the service that's being provided by Twin Lakes, I'm just curious, what service are they going to be providing with that? Is it cable TV?
Cable services, yeah. They'll install a fiber cable and compete for internet.
Internet?
Yeah, those kind of things.
Internet, fiber,
Yeah.
internet, cable service, okay.
Yeah.
Competition's always good.
It is, but as Mr. Shipley and I talked, 10 or 15 years from now, how tall do the poles have to be to house all of the communication companies? So.
Yeah. And one thing everybody needs to remember on the cable TV and internet is several years ago the state of Tennessee took over the control of that, so it's really all controlled through the state back when AT&T had that issue down at the legislature, so it's really out of our control now.
Yeah, the Federal Communications Act basically puts you in a position where you can't deny these kind of things. So, and I will be bringing probably at the next meeting another somewhat identical agreement to you that Dan and his folks are looking over now. It'll be somewhat verbatim with just a few changes, but it's with a company called Delta Com that was out of Delaware that's now in Alabama doing some similar things. So,
Will we have enough room for them?
yeah,
Okay.
it's all about money.
It's all about taller poles.
That's right.
Now, this $12.52 per pole, is that a standard for the industry, or how do they come?
Yeah, we looked a few years ago, Mr. Woodford, and we basically just looked at all the power companies in the state of Tennessee to see what they were charging. There's quite a bit of legislation in the legislature now, and has been for years, on pole attachment fees.
Right.
Of course, they want it as cheap as they can get it, and we want it where it needs to be, so there's all kinds of legislation about that. But yes, this is state average cost.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? Any comments from the audience? Seeing none, all vote.
Thank you.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Peak. On to item 9. Consider awarding a bid for refuse and cardboard containers. It's a 6-month contract. Public Works Department sponsor Greg Brown.
Mayor and Council, we recently bid refuse and cardboard containers. Baker's Waste was the lowest total bid. I would recommend your approval.
Thank you. Do we have a motion for approval?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right. Comments from council? Questions?
I have a question which really doesn't have anything to do with this particular bid. Did we ever set up another recycling
We're still working on that.
Oh, okay. Over there where the gas was? Okay.
We have to get the park finished first.
Okay, I'm all about the park.
Okay.
Anything else? Comments from the audience? All right. Seeing none, all vote.
5 yes votes, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. All right, this is part of the meeting where we like to open the floor to any citizens or delegations. All we ask is that you come to the podium, state your name, and if you could keep it to 3 minutes, that would be great. So it's an open floor to talk about anything you like.
Mayor Swallows, I'd like to point out that I have some students here tonight gaining extra credit for their U.S. history class, and I usually torture you and make you stand up. Megan? Carter? Oh, Megan. There you go. Good. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. It's pretty easy extra credit for 20 minutes, right?
Look at Megan's face. She's not so sure that it was easy.
She's a tough teacher, isn't she?
Ms. Davidson and Ms. Kelly supposed to be here.
Well, yeah, they're supposed to be here, but I'll get back at them next week. That's okay. They sent their fathers in proxy for them. We'll see how that goes. I may give their dads a test tonight before we leave to see if they get the extra credit.
All right, anything else from the council?
Well, I'm tickled to death about the trees in Dogwood Park. I think they look great, and when first they put in the tall trees, and then the next day I think they put in the dogwood trees, and they still have blooms on them. So, you know, every day it gets a little bit closer to having a great park right in the middle of our town. I mean, it's already a great park, but in addition to the great park.
Anyone else?
No.
All right, just happy Easter this weekend. This meeting's adjourned.
There you go.